Hello, my name is Vivi Kieffer, and I welcome you to Aletheia Human. Today we'll have a very interesting guest. He's news reporter, global affairs specialist, and writer. Michael Bociurkiw is our guest. He will share with us his personal story, but also his insight since he has almost been from day one reporting on COVID-19. So to make sure we can overcome this crisis, I've invited Michael to share with us his knowledge and his insight. So Michael, welcome to Aletheia Human. It's a huge pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here, all the way from Canada.
So, Michael, tell me, how did you begin wanting to be a journalist at the beginning? So what motivated you from start?
Yeah, well, I'm an odd person in the sense that I think when I was born, they threw away the mold because unlike even a lot of my siblings or contemporaries, I really didn't have a plan, kind of fell into things. And I'll give you a funny story. In grade 10, I really didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to leave the house. So I didn't run away, but I went to a very remote part of Canada where my brother was studying in a monastery. It's called a minor seminary, seminary, where you go to perhaps prepare for the priesthood. And my brother was definitely on that path. And I thought, well, let's go see what it's all about. So I went for a year. And then after a year, they politely told me, yeah, we don't think this is for you. So you may want to go back. So I went back, and I really, though, felt somehow, I think that whole year, though, sparked something inside of me to become an activist. So I became very active in our Ukrainian community and our Ukrainian student movement. It's just like a match was lit and a fire set. And in university, I was volunteering at our campus radio station and became a producer for a show which eventually won the Best Public Affairs Program Award. And I really wanted to go into journalism, but because of all of my activism, my marks never reached a very stratospheric level. And even though my father was a professor, so you can imagine the pressure. So I developed a sense back then, which I still hold now, is never take no for an answer. So I took the next best thing, which was called mass communications, which is actually better than journalism because you study politics, sociology, statistics, a whole range of things. You can learn journalism on the side, and I was learning it anyway at our radio station. And yeah, from there, things took off. Luck has served me very well. Friends and network has served me well. I was given some stories. My first ever story in a mainstream newspaper was page 1 above the fold of our national newspaper. I leaked a Royal Commission report, which is a pretty serious thing to do when you're in your early 20s and you're not used to all the attention. But that took off, and I was kept on the story. And then it led to other things. I did more cross-border reporting, in the northern United States and places like Michigan. And then I won't keep the story too long, but some point along the way, someone said, you've never worked in a newsroom, you've never emptied ashtrays, poured coffee, time for you to do that. So I was sent into exile to Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is in our center of Canada, and worked there for a year as a reporter. But then they threw me into City Hall, which is great because you learn a lot about municipal politics. But they let me go to Asia for an assignment, and that was a mistake on their part because I kind of smelt the air in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I thought, my goodness, I have to move here. So I got a job on the spot, came back to Canada, said, hasta la vista. And that's it. I had a whole 10-year amazing career with South China Morning Post in Hong Kong. I was part of the startup teams of 2 newspapers. I was Philippines correspondent, where I was almost killed by a volcano, but that's a story for another time. So it really, I am extremely, extremely lucky to work with great people and have great opportunities and cover some of the biggest stories of our time and meet a lot of world leaders and corporate leaders. I was freelancing for Forbes magazine at the time, and that opened up an amazing opportunity to meet many world and corporate leaders around Asia. So I learned a lot about being able to report in very sensitive environments, but without being shown the door and told to leave the country. One very wise Asian editor once told me, you know, we want you, for example, to go to Singapore and report as critically as you can, but without getting thrown out. Because once you get thrown out of a country, you're of no use to us. So that was a very good lesson that I remember up to this day.
So what do you think? What do you think could be extrapolated for all the people right now that are in lockdown, and many will have from now on their careers changed, right? So you had important career changes. What is the main recipe? It's not that I think everything is applicable, but what do you think could be applicable by everyone?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, look, it's not exactly easy for everyone, especially someone who's come from a very traditional kind of office or corporate environment where they have a very defined career path. But my main message to everyone is be adaptable, be flexible, think outside of the box, whether it's learning a new skill, whether it's learning a new language, use this time to build your network. The reason I say that is because, okay, I am lucky and maybe I have angels over me, but also my network provides. That's what I tell everyone. If you have a network, and I don't mean just go friends some people on LinkedIn, but engage with them and make sure that they know about you and remember you, so that when the time comes and you need some kind of help or contacts or connection, they will be there for you. The reason I got all of these great opportunities is not because I've really gone out and searched for them, but people have come to me and said, Michael, would you want to do this? Are you interested in this? So that is one thing. The other is to, I know this sounds very basic advice, but throughout your day, it's very easy right now to let the days slip by. Hours go into days, days goes into weeks, weeks go into months. And you look back and you say, my God, what have I done? Or so routine is something very important to keep, but make an achievement for yourself per day or per week and say, this is what I'm going to achieve. It is not easy. I mean, all of us, including myself, we have our down days where we wake up and you hardly, want to get out of bed. And the other thing to keep your spirits up is, of course, keep connections with people, but don't oversaturate yourself with the news, because it is very bleak right now, very negative. Use it, treat the news like you would treat high calorie food, for instance. You're not going to go to the fridge and reach for cookies all the time. Same thing with your television, because you will have negative consequences.
Well, I heard that a lot of memes are showing that people are getting fatter right now. So
yes,
you're putting them on a diet, and plus you're telling them that they should, trim on less on TV. That's difficult. That's quite harsh.
Yeah. And what do I do when I watch less TV? I go to my kitchen and I dream up new recipes. I made a lasagna for the first time the other day. It turned out beautifully. But I've also been actually experimenting in the kitchen, doing new kind of cuisine, stuff like that, for when the lockdown does lift. I can go back to entertaining people. The other thing that I find really helps is getting together once or twice a week with a network of friends. I do that weekly with my friends across the border over there in Pacific Northwest. And of course, we have our happy hour or whatever, but we also talk about what our experiences are, but we trade intelligence about what this employer is doing, that employer.
Yeah.
I don't want to put your listeners or viewers on edge, but I do think very strongly that the world is going to change in a way we never anticipated.
No, that's for sure.
That is why we have to be ready. I was thinking this morning about which events were kind of what they call life-changing events in my life. And, there was Chernobyl in Ukraine, there was 9/11, For me, there was because I was in Ukraine at the time, the invasion of Eastern Ukraine and the crash of MH17. And then, of course, this. And these were all points on my timeline where I told myself, oh my goodness, the world will never be the same again. But after Chernobyl, after 9/11, after those other smaller events, the world did more or less keep on going and was recognizable. But I think now that is the big thing on my mind, is that, as I used in my piece yesterday, we're going to have a new normal. Some aspects of that will be very comfortable and welcoming. I think we're becoming much more connected in a way as humanity. We're being more humane to each other. But on the other hand, I'm very worried, for example, about physical distancing measures that are going to be required for the next while and what that will mean for all of us. I jumped into this coronavirus thing, if you will, very, very early on in January because one of the outlets I write for the most, CNN Opinion, asked me to start writing about it. So, and having lived in Asia, and through previous epidemics or pandemics, I kind of had a feeling that we're in for a big one. So a long time ago, psychologically, I think I started to prepare myself. Now, thank God, I tell many people I feel like I dodged a bullet because I haven't had any symptoms. But now, Vivi and I have 4 or 5 friends who have it. Some very, very seriously, one in ICU before. 2 of them broadcast people, CNN, Chris Cuomo and Brooke Baldwin. Many of your viewers would recognize those names. So
Of course.
you feel, I don't know, blessed, but also very, very lucky that you didn't get this.
So this podcast is about giving the best tools I can find from the people I know. First, to survive this lockdown with sanity. And the second is also to whatever happens next. And that was very interesting what you said is, okay, you felt something big was coming and you were preparing.
Basically, my career can be divided into 2 pillars. One is the journalism, which we talked about already, but then the other is the humanitarian side. I worked about 10 years or so in humanitarian aid, mostly with UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund. But then also in your neck of the woods, the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe. I came there in early 2014 and worked for about 2 years as spokesperson for the Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine. And I think that is the time of my life where things really changed for me. You know, we go into journalism or even into humanitarian aid and we develop this sense of invincibility that, nothing can bring us down. And there are good and bad sides to that. You can keep on going. But if you don't fix what is going on the inside, it can be very damaging, as you well know. And I have seen close colleagues succumb to burnout, and it is not a pretty thing to see. So because of that, I'm very, perhaps more in tune with myself and what's going on. But over those 2 years that I spent in Ukraine, in the first 3 months, we had 2 kidnappings of our colleagues, and then the tragic crash of MH17, which killed 298 people over eastern Ukraine, brought down by a Russian missile. And all of a sudden, life changed for me dramatically. I was all over the world news. Day after day after day, I basically became spokesperson for that crash. And on the one hand, while I felt very privileged to play the role that I was, I really felt that I was really trying to help the relatives, none of which could really come to the crash site, tell them what we're seeing, what is being done. But after a while, it started to affect me physically. That was a big, big changing point in my life because a lot of people still associate me with that tragedy. But it's turned out to be a beautiful thing in the sense that I've become friends of the families, of the relatives. Every year I try to go to their memorial in Amsterdam and we check in with each other from time to time and see how we're all doing. So I always like to say, you always have to look for the silver lining. Out of tragedy can come opportunity or beautiful things. And I'm hoping the same thing for what we're in right now.
Definitely. Those families have I'm sure, created like a human link, human bond,
Yes.
and they wanted, you were representing them in a kind of way, and they wanted an answer
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
what can explain their loss, which
Yes.
at some point maybe something can explain, but they will never recover fully from the loss. And this invincibility you spoke about
Mm-hmm.
is something very important, because when you said that word, I was like, that's exactly how our society has been living, as if
Yes.
we were invincible. And right
Yes.
now, through this crisis, we're understanding we're not as invincible as we thought. And that maybe the most important is not what can be seen. And actually, it's like the Little Prince, of Saint-Exupéry. The most important thing is the invisibility of human links
Yeah.
and the bonds between humans. So this is actually, you've given me a nice way of going back to the important theme. For me, it is empathy and how we can create
Mm-hmm.
links, relationships, human beings being connected for something else, maybe for something higher in spirit. It does not have to be religious, but it has to be stronger than business. It's not business as usual. We're not in business as usual. Actually, we're in lockdown for most of us, and if when business as usual does not exist, what is the creation of it. And I
Yeah.
think that's definitely this human link, the necessity, the willingness to truly meet the other human beings and learn from them and create something greater.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely. If I can, I think we're going to emerge out of this crisis okay as humanity, as society, but I think we're going to be looking at the world and at each other with new lenses. And what I mean by that, it's absolutely amazing what is going on right now with the empathy towards frontline workers, as we call them. Everyone from the healthcare workers to the person who delivers your mail to the person who at the checkout counter at the grocery store. These are people who traditionally survive paycheck to paycheck. They aren't well treated, I think, in society, generally speaking. And yet we're now seeing them as crucial parts of our society, crucial parts of the supply chain or care chain, if you will. And I hope that we come out of this not only with that new attitude of respect towards people like that, but also that changes will be made to better appreciate them, better healthcare for them all, better salaries, that sort of thing. And I think that is happening right now. I mean, it is. You go to the grocery store here, or probably anywhere else in North America, and you hear a lot of people actually thank them, the people at the checkout counter, and say, "Thank you for being here," because we do know that they are today risking their lives. I know that a lot of them are doing this out of altruistic reasons. They want to keep things working, but a lot of them don't have any choice either. If they were even to miss a few days of work, they would be in very difficult straits financially. So it's really, really good what's happening. The other thing, Vivi, I want to say is, we mentioned that word invincibility, and I think in the corporate world, a lot of companies felt invincible. Airlines, big brands, Uber, TED Talks, I'm looking at them carefully now, Airbnb, these are companies that have literally been brought to their knees. And it's very interesting, for example, what is happening, TED or TED Talks is one of the strongest brands of the past few years that have developed worldwide, but they were, I think, a good example of a corporation or a company that was totally unprepared for this. And all of a sudden their event stopped and they went to doing things out of their homes. The founder, Mr. Alexander, I think, is doing basically video interviews from his home, and their viewership has plunged.
of course.
So I don't like to use the word equalizer. It's a bit of a controversial term during these times, but I think it will kind of see a new playing field, if you will, that you can be very strong one day, but very weak the next, fighting for your survival. And one last thing, I mean, I really, really feel for small business owners. These are people who put their life savings into, whether it's a grocery store on the corner, to a small travel firm, to a barbershop, hairstylist, nail salon. I heard a very frightening statistic the other day from Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks. He said that if the US government doesn't take bolder steps financially to help small businesses, millions and millions, I think he used the figure 10 million small businesses could disappear by September in the United States. And these are all individual people we're talking about. And that would be very sad. So we're not out of the woods yet when it comes to this.
Yeah, the small businesses actually is the column of our society. And that's what is important to understand, is those are people are next to us. So that's also, there are campaigns arising in every of our countries saying, okay, buy local, buy your colleague, buy the neighbor. So let's help each other survive during this crisis, this impressive crisis that actually will probably mark this century in a big way. Definitely. But it all depends on us at the end on what we'll do with it. So this is actually the message I would like for my viewers go home with is, yes, there will be changes, but we can get ready for those changes. And whatever happens, I'm sure that there will be a huge learning as human beings. And we're already seeing it. And because of this all social distancing, we are getting closer. And this is incredible. So
I agree, totally.
So thank you very much, Michael, for your time. I know you have quite urgent themes this weekend. I'll be hearing Global Impact and reading your articles more avidly as ever. Thank you very much. And for all the listeners of Aletheia Human and the viewers in YouTube, keep safe, keep home, and keep positive, because on the long run, it all depends on us. So I think that as a human network, we will do fine. We just have to believe. And believe is a huge part of the road. Don't you think, though?
Absolutely. And I would like to thank you as well for having me as your guest, and wish you good health. And I know you will stay connected. And I hope everyone that is listening will think about staying connected. And that last message was very important, is that support your local small businesses. These are mostly families or individuals who have risked everything. And hopefully that will also be a positive legacy out of this whole crisis, is that we're now more connected to our community and more supportive of those special things that support us and tie us together.
Yes, so let's feel human, let's feel part of a network, and let's keep together. See you very, very soon. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao.